Great. Welcome, everyone. If you're just joining in now, we've just opened up the waiting room, so we'll get started in 1 or 2 minutes. But just to let you know, I'm Georgia, and I'm going to be facilitating today's session. Very excited to be with you today. Just a few notes before we get started. If you would like to take notes, please get a pen and paper now. Get comfortable. If you do have any questions along the way, please feel free to make use of the chat box section. Vessel and myself are in the room, and he'll be facilitating the answering of some questions if those do arise. But just to say welcome and really excited to be here. I think we're waiting for 1 or 2 more people. I'm going to wait 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Great. I hope everyone's keeping warm, got a nice hot drink, but we're going to get stuck in as soon as possible into today's session. So today's session is unlocking next level performance in your team. And we're going to be focusing and looking at the principles of application when using Clifton Strengths. And just a few notes before we dive into the session. One thing to note, if you are not familiar with Clifton Strengths or haven't heard of the profiling tool before, we are from to help maximize staff and team performance. And so this profiling tool is an online assessment through Gallup. Clifton Strengths was developed by Don Clifton. And so if you do want more information on this tool and how to implement it within your personal life as well as in your work environment, the best thing to do is to start with the assessment, which you can take online or contact one of us after the session. But just to note that we will be integrating strengths into today's application for the principles that we'll be using to integrate strengths into unlocking our team's performance. And then another thing, this session is titled Unlocking Your Team's Performance. And so it is really going to be focused on how we as individuals lead our teams, how effective our engagement with our teams are, and how we're going to improve that. So if you aren't a leader in a team, please don't disengage or stop listening, because this is a really helpful set of practices for even self-leadership as well as leading areas within your personal life. You may not necessarily have that title, but you may be leading yourself as well as maybe friends or in different spheres other than your workspace. So please tune in, and I really do hope this session is helpful with regards to the application tips. So let's just dive in quickly. Myself and Vessel in the room. I am, just to introduce yourself introduce myself in light of strengths. I am majority a relationship builder, which means that if you see my profile, I have majority green, which is influencing domains. And what that means is that I love people and I get energized by interactions with people. And I really love to communicate and encourage people along the way. Vessel is a relationship builder, and he really does enjoy those one-on-ones, those engagements with the team as well as with clients. So that's what we can expect from him. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of why these domains or talents and strengths are so important in our application and interactions with our staff and teams. But before we dive in, if anyone does have any questions, like I mentioned previously, please put those in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them as promptly and as accurately as possible. Just a disclaimer, this is our learnings from Clifton Strengths and our interactions within organizations. So these are just our observations as well as key principles that we've come up with as organizational solutions in order to help you implement strengths in your daily activities and work environment. Great. So I'm going to start us off with a quote that I came across while I was prepping for the session, and it really kind of sets the foundation and sets kind of the direction of where we're heading today. And this is what it says: Anyone can sit in a corner office and delegate tasks, but there is a more effective, there's more effective leadership than that. Effective leadership has a major impact on not only the team members that they're managing, but also the company as a whole. Employees work under great leaders. Employees who work under great leaders are happier, more productive, and connected to their organization. And this has a large ripple effect that reaches your business's bottom line. And so just to summarize, the target is your business's bottom line. It's effective work and producing results. But the focus, however, is on the staff and the team. And we're going to have a look at that. But what it comes down to is actually the quality of leader that you are and the quality of the engagement and the interactions you have with your staff. How well are you able to motivate your team and understand how they think and act and behave, and how you can adapt your leadership to kind of set them up for success? So we'll be looking at that in our session. And what we have found is quite interesting. We found that most leaders actually struggle to engage with their staff in light of their domains or their strengths. And I'll go into detail with regards to strengths and domains in a moment, just to give those who have not experienced Clifton Strengths a bit of context. But they often struggle to engage in the correct ways which will hopefully lead to performance in their teams. And so the question that we pose today is, how do we implement strengths into our everyday interactions with our teams? And this has got to do with how do we implement or apply strengths to our conversations, to our management, to our delegation of tasks, to our vision casting, to our problem solving, and even our empowerment or encouragement within our teams. And so we need to establish what the leader's role is. What is the team leader's role when it comes to implementing strengths and maximizing their staff's potential and performance? And one thing, after reading that quotation, it really stuck out that leaders it's all about the quality of the leader, and they need those qualities as apart from your daily activities and other duties, which go hand in hand. But you need to have, so first off, you need to keep in mind that you are in the profession of human behavior. It's a full-time job. You need to understand what motivates your team, what drains them, what frustrates them, and all those aspects, so that you know how to pivot and move with regards to mobilizing the different people within your team in different scenarios. And so knowing your team and their strengths and learning to implement strengths is going to set you apart and give you a step up in your leadership and your interactions with your team, which hopefully and most probably will result in high levels of engagement and performance. You see, the team leader sets the tone and the culture for the team. It's the team leader's role to play as the conductor, as the person who's conducting his team. And so, you know, you will have to learn how to mobilize your team, how to help them recover quickly from mistakes, how to lead them and guide and instruct, and even capitalize on their skills. And finally, maximize their strengths and bring out the best in your people. And so improving your team or your focus or the target, which I mentioned previously, and the target is the organization's bottom line. We need to actually change our focus to all the things mentioned above. And so that is your role as team leader. So how do we take that and move forward? Well, we're going to look at a strengths-based approach. And in the strengths-based approach, we'll be discussing a couple of frameworks which will hopefully assist you in your in all your engagements with your staff. And so initially with strengths, it's a slowing down of the process because we're needing to think before we act. And so one thing that I want you to note is that when we slow down the process, we will be able to run faster with longer endurance in due time. It just takes a bit of time to retrain our brain, and I will get to that in the first bit of our framework. So let's head to the 3 frameworks that we're going to be looking at today, and I'm really excited about this. Firstly, positive psychology. Why positive psychology? Because it's a retraining of our minds to think before we speak, think before we delegate tasks or move someone from a different office to another. So we need to think about things at first, and then understanding the domains is imperative as a leader, because you will then know the language in which to speak to X, Y, and Z person within your team. And when there's understanding, the person feels valued, and there's a whole bunch of ripple effects, positive ripple effects, when you actually sit down and understand what your team needs from you. And then apply. And that's when it comes to the interaction. So we're going to distill down what we've learned in terms of the domains, and we're going to look at practical applications of how the domains behave. And so we'll look at your everyday scenarios. We've just picked 3 or 4 couple of scenarios where we'll look at how the domains behave and how what we can expect from them going forward. So really exciting stuff. What I would urge you to do is just take a few notes as we go, and really so you can reflect later on, because there's a few reflective questions at the end that are really going to help you kind of work out the implementation of these applications. So the first thing is positive psychology. And what leaders fail sometimes to do, actually, scratch that, not leaders, humans. We trained, brought up. Some of you who have joined in on this session would hear us speak about this quite frequently. But in essence, when we're focusing on the weaknesses, we're actually placing judgment on people of going, why can't people act, think, and behave the way we do? Why can't Johnny execute work the way I do? Or why can't Sandra understand when I delegate a task? Why does she ask so many questions? And that has a whole bunch of implications to it. But in essence, we naturally want people to think and act and behave the way we do. And so throughout your life, you probably would have experienced a little bit of feedback or criticism, or areas where you have fallen short as a leader or even as a person. And so our brains are kind of wired towards this train of thinking. And this is the first step of becoming a quality leader, is by appreciating, not only focusing on strengths. Yes, I will get to that, but it's focusing on both, but celebrating the contributions that your team has to offer. And so I've put together a little bit of a few slides on these specific points. But the first quote that kind of epitomizes positive psychology is this: everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And what that quote actually means is that I, an influencer, wants everyone to think and act and behave the way I do. Caleb, the co-founder of Organizational Health Solutions, is majority, he is an executor, which means that he executes projects and tasks, and he's very driven and self-motivated. He sometimes projects his desires on me, and I often fail just because I'm not wired that way. It's not my natural inclination or my wiring to be more focused on tasks and less on people engagement and areas of like limelight moments. So he's honestly, we've struggled with this throughout our business working relationship, and he has expected me to be a fish climbing a tree. I mean, a monkey climbing a tree, because he's a monkey climbing a tree, but I'm actually a fish and I need to be in water. And so the crux of this is that most of us think in lines of what this person lacks or where they are dropping the ball, or where we are frustrated with them because they're not like us. And so it's about changing our mindsets. And so there's a couple of things with regards to positive psychology I'd quickly like to go through. If we look at positive psychology, it's about being concerned with the strengths as with weaknesses. And one thing to note is that we need to firstly, number one is accepting the fact that you're not something and that you do have X, Y, and Z qualities or tools in your toolbox, and then using those tools and not expecting a hammer to be there when there isn't one, if you get my drift. So in essence, we are looking, and I'm going to skip to the bottom point there. It says, if you focus on what's right and unique with people and not only what's wrong with them. You know, positive psychology is two things. It's being concerned with repairing the worst things, but it's also being concerned and celebrating the value add that your staff have. So I would engage with my staff, particularly on encouraging them in their strengths, pinpointing their strengths. Vessel is a colleague of mine, and I often say to him, wow, Vessel, your individualization really stood out there. Well done. I value that aspect and that angle that you bring and contribution you bring to the team. Or, Steve, I really love your analytical, because you analyze the data and you really do bring everything down to the facts. And we sometimes as a team linger onto a different path, but we need you to bring us back. And so I want to celebrate that in you. And so celebrating and acknowledging people's strengths and their contributions is the start of not necessarily painting everyone with the same brush, but painting everyone with a unique brush and celebrating that they are not a fish in a tree, but they are fish in water. Okay, so positive psychology is all about thinking. Think before you speak, you act, you delegate a task, or even you place judgment. Think is kind of your key thought there. Great, we're gonna head to point 2 out of our frameworks, and that's domains. Now, domains is all about understanding. And why is it important for us to understand the domains? And this is coming back to those of you in the room that don't have knowledge on Clifton Strengths as of yet, or haven't experienced Clifton Strengths. I'm going to go into a little bit of an explanation of the domains. But just so that you know, leaders, this is level 1 of understanding your team. Obviously, there are 34 talents, not obviously for those in the room. There are 34 talents that fit into 4 domains. And those 34 talents are kind of categorized so you'll see at the bottom of the quadrant, you'll see a list of all these names of talents or strengths, and they fit into each of these domains. And what you need to note is that the online assessment produces 34 talents, and they rate them from the strongest talent or the most frequently used or the most prominent talent all the way down to the weakest talent. And the results will be determined by your top 10 or your top 5. So we will look, when we coach people, we'll look at your top 10 talents. People interactions. This really adds value when it comes to interacting with the clients, doing individual sessions, and he really does get motivated by that. Some weeks go by and he doesn't get to interact with people, and I chat to him and I say, Vessel, what's going on? He says, you know what I realized? My relationship building domain is not being fed. And so my quality of my other work, or my motivation per se, is actually going down in the other aspects of my job, because relationships are really important to me and I value those interactions, especially when it comes to a team leader and leading someone with relationship building, what you need to note is that they do want more of a personal engagement, and that time is very much valued and can actually motivate them. Also, one thing to note, don't be surprised if they're not happy in a job that requires them to work on their own or work solo or with very little people engagement and interaction. They are extroverts, just like the influencing domain, which we'll get to now. So the influencers, they in the green domain, and what motivates them is response and reaction. So they're motivated by surrounding themselves with people to influence, as well as like taking charge of moments or being the voice in the group. When you think about influencers, they like the limelight, they like to themselves, engage with people to create motivation and energy, which leads to action. So I am an influencer, and I thoroughly enjoy moments where I get to engage with bigger groups and mingle and chat to people. So that's kind of where I derive most of my energy. Influencers are also executing. So what we can expect from influencers is that they do like to, a lot of these talents are very motivated and fast-paced. So what we can expect is execution from most of these, even a little bit of self-assurance and woo coming quite strong. So they can execute quite nicely when needed. To the executing domain, which is the red domain, they are majority motivated by results and realities. So what they want is really focus, efficiency, getting tasks done quickly. They really do like to tick things off the list. So one thing that they do bring is a little bit more of a clinical or task-focused environment to the team. One thing as a leader, if you are an executor and you've got a lot of relationship builders, I would just say, remember relationship builders like the relational aspects and interactions before tasks are delegated, etc. One thing I would say there is for you just to adjust a little. Caleb has executing, and he really does struggle to engage on a personal level or check in with his team, but he does that well because he's put a task. It's like a task, so he does treat it like that, but he does value it near the end. So we're all happy once he has engaged with us and he has tried to accommodate both the influencing talents within me and the relationship building within Vessel. So another thing about executing is when we look at their interaction with strategic thinkers often slow down the process slightly in order to think and process. So executors, if you are leading strategic thinkers, you may want to ask them thought-provoking questions that may lead to actionables, or give them time to think and be patient in that. I know executors are always on the run and quite fast-paced, but just to slow it down for the strategic thinkers may be important. And then also for executors to not necessarily place judgment on strategic thinkers, because strategic thinkers view thinking as executing. And also relationship builders value, relationship builders value relationships more than the meeting agenda per se. So let's look at strategic thinking. The last domain there, they want reason and reflection. They're motivated by time to think and time to process information. So they're motivated by thinking, they believe thinking is doing, and so they need to be monitored in the work context, as they may slow down the team sometimes, and maybe even unnecessarily because of their desire to think before they act. So that is one thing. Thinking before acting is what we can expect from strategic thinkers. They do need to be micromanaged to an extent. I hate the word micromanaged. I would say they need to be held accountable for the tasks that they have been given. And if they're not able to get something done, then I would say join them or have a meeting with them to ask them what you can do to improve the thought processes behind the task that they need to accomplish. Okie dokie. So that is your your domains, let's move to the interactions, or how we're going to take this knowledge and kind of integrate it into our everyday practical work life. So if we look at the interactions, we're going to start with meetings. So let's look at the domains in light of meetings. Now, just a quick one with meetings. Staff meetings, regular team meetings are imperative to getting everyone on the same page, as well as allowing others to assist when there's problems, or for everyone to kind of have a say or helping in problem solving, or analyzing what's to come in the agenda or in the projects to come. So if we look at meetings, we do a staff meeting once a week. That is quite important to for everyone to touch base, as well as for all of us to check in on where we're at with our tasks. Relationship builders value this the most. They will listen, and they will really kind of strive for as many meetings as possible. It creates a sense of teamwork, as well as they love the relational interactions, and then their focus is people and not necessarily always the agenda. So that's what we can expect from relationship builders. Influencers, if you are not an influencer, but you have an influencer that you're leading, don't be surprised if they either want to be heard, or dominate the conversation, or hijack a conversation, or want the final say. They have a tendency to also want to take control. That's obviously influencing talents like holistically. They don't all want to take control, but that's just like an overview of influencers, and that's what we can expect from them in meetings. They're also on the relational side, or extroverted sides. They do enjoy the meetings. Just make sure that the person who's conducting the meeting keeps to the agenda, because with influencers or relationship builders, you can get a bit sidetracked and branch out too frequently. And that could annoy or even frustrate the executors, because they are very to the point, clear, efficient, and results driven. They often don't want meetings at all, because they find it's a waste of time, or people just want to voice their opinions or their ideas, and nothing gets done. The key with executors in meetings, make sure that there's clear points, that there's clear clarity when it comes to discussing an idea, and then distilling down what are the actionable items within those ideas or projects that need to be done. The clearer, the better when it comes to executors, because then you'll just get them running and you can't stop them. Strategic thinkers, they'll mostly stay quiet in meetings. And they will be processing and thinking about everything said. So you don't necessarily, we don't want to paint a brush with them, because you could have, for instance, you're a strategic thinker, but your second domain is relationship building or influencing. That changes everything quite a bit. So we're just looking at the raw state of strategic thinkers, but in essence, they do like to absorb the information and think about things before they speak. Often their greatest, so really either create that space for them to share their thoughts, or just send the agenda 2 or 3 days prior to the meeting, just so they have something to think about, and then they can actually contribute verbally in that meeting. But don't overlook their silence as a lack of contribution. They're just thinking and processing, and that time is super valuable. So tap into that either the next day or an hour or two later. They also may slow down meetings, so to think, or slow down the task to think and analyze the problems or the situations, and make the team aware of all the factors within the meetings, which could take more time. Great, let's move to tasks. If we look at tasks, relationship builders, they may slow down the process and the task. For instance, when you delegate a task to a relationship builder, always find out how they're doing personally, how their weeks are going. Do a brief little check-in with them, as they feel like the executors are sometimes heartless, or people with another agenda are a little bit more clinical, and they don't value that. So just make sure that you do the personal check-in before you delegate anything. Influencers, give them vision and the big picture. Something to note, that they are motivated by influencing people, not necessarily by the task. It's about how well they can motivate and mobilize and control and kind of command the moment more than the task. And then executors, they don't put timelines to the projects and tasks given or deadlines. You may not use any more or clearer description. So your executors are fine in that sense. Strategic thinkers, bring them in from the beginning of the project or the ideal conversation. They need to be part of the beginning. I never to do that, and you need to execute a task without knowing the background story. There'll probably be a lot of delays or misunderstandings, or the task won't be delivered as you expected, because you need to give them context. You need to give them the back thinking and get their thoughts and even get their contributions with regards to that project or task. Great. Now, before we go into check-ins, I just inserted a little slide here, which I'm going to briefly run through. Micromanagement, you can see it's crossed out because we don't really believe in micromanagement. We believe in check-ins. Not one of the domains thrives under micromanagement. I don't think humans like micromanagement, and this is why. Because micromanagement erodes trust. It's basically saying, I don't trust you enough to do this task well, or I don't trust you enough to deliver, and so I'm going to keep checking in on you, or even just take over the whole task myself because you naturally think you could do the task better or faster. Often people who micromanage want a task to be done or project to be done a certain way, and there's not a lot of freedom for the team to kind of evolve or think and implement ways to do it themselves. And then you want control, and it's a little bit more of a dictatorship style of going, this is what needs to be done, this is how it needs to be done, please be a robot for me. And so it's very orientated, and it kind of is about focus on how well we're able to engage with. So check-ins are very imperative, often in a group regularly enough. The reason why the group context of check-ins is very important is because when issues come in minds to solve these problems and how you kind of from settings being on a personal side, finding out how they are, where they are feeling drained, where do they feel motivated, are they thriving, are they surviving. So check-ins are really imperative to actually all the domains. And so let's look at the relationship building domain. They appreciate the personal connection as they aren't task oriented, which we've established, and they mainly are relationship focused. Remember, the check-in will motivate a relationship builder. They want to connect personally. If an executing domain is secondary in their profile, this may look slightly different, where they may need an even amount of check-ins as well as they find to just fly, on their own. So gauge whether or not they have a secondary or other executing talents which may affect this. Influencers, they definitely need to be re-envisioned and re-motivated. Often through the discussion, they influence either by the leader, or they can influence the leader and they get energy from that. So it motivates them to get going. So check-ins could be really helpful for influencers. Show them the big picture. Keep talking to them about what the end goal is, that all these little activities accumulate to a bigger, grander goal and vision, because they are influencers and they do want to see their part that they're playing to influence the people that they're working with, as well as their clients. Executors, they only require this if they don't have clarity on what's expected of them. With executors, check-ins are mainly about, finding out from them if they are on the verge of burnout or not. That's kind of, I would say, the check-in that kind of needs to happen with regards to that. Unless they've got a relationship building talent or, relationship building domain or influencing domain. I would say that they don't necessarily thinkers, they may not have much quick one. Often leaders will not kind of engage with this aspect of things, but we believe that strengths influences every aspect, and we've seen it time and time again. Executors will strive for the spaces that make them most productive. So usually quiet interruptions. If you're an executor mainly, then what you will want is a place where you can do your work and get things done and feel accomplished, not a noisy, interruptive environment. Don't expect executors to be those relational people who are at the front desk, being interrupted all day long and chatting to people and things like that. That's not really where they function best. If we look at influencers, they'll be fine in an open plan office. They often will want people around them to interact with and to influence. Relationship builders, they're also fine in the kind of open plan, and they want to either be close to friends or have that team atmosphere. They love and value the team and the emotions and the feelings of the team. Strategic thinkers, they also need time or space in a quiet environment where they get time to think about their work and their tasks. So I would say that executors and strategic thinkers definitely need how do you when you feel like you max will drain you. You're gathering data permanently about your team as team leader, so that you can engage and mobilize as you see fit. And so I'm going to land with 3 reflective questions, and these questions are as follows. And there's multiple questions, but I think these 3 really kind of sum up what we're doing here today. Is, do I know each of my team members' value adds? What do they value? What do I see in them that I can acknowledge their contribution? And write a list of your team members' names and what value they bring. And try and tap into that more frequently throughout your week. And then, how well do I understand my team members' domains? This is really the biggest key application, because if I understand the domains, I will know what to feed my team members in order to set them up for success and avoid mediocre work or even misunderstandings, conflict, even resentment. Sometimes leaders, unfortunately, and we do things, or that I took notes about myself that I really want to work on, or I really want to focus on that and see where there can be levels of improvement, or where I need to engage with this performer who's a little bit more of a low performer. Okay, great, guys. That was quite a mouthful, and sorry if none of you have ever drunk out of a fire hydrant before. It's not always that great, but I hope that this experience wasn't too, and listen to this again, or you do have questions for us. Like I said, we're on email. You can Facebook us, you can Instagram us, you can actually find us on Instagram. And just a couple of things. What I would recommend is get the Gallup app. If you're in a team, get all your team members to share their profiles. The app is amazing with so many helpful resources. Gallup has actually launched this most amazing podcast series explaining each individual domain, each individual talent, and it is so insightful. It's two of the most world-renowned Gallup coaches that actually this podcast. It's free, it's often, but just to say, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, and yeah, all the best for the rest of the day.